Today, we have the greatest honor of speaking with someone who has been working in the front lines of one of the most harrowing incidents of our recent times, Gaza. Joining us today is Dr. Mo Mustafa, who is an emergency physician who recently worked in Gaza. He was just not treating patients. He was bearing witness to the human cost of the war in a zone where most of the tragedies were the civilians, and he was bearing witness to that one, where hospitals are no more sanctuaries. Under international law, hospitals should be protected, but Israelis never respected that one. The hospitals are the direct target of many of their attacks and destruction. Amidst the destruction, where the wounded were pouring in by the minute, Dr. Mo and his colleagues continuously provided their service under unimaginable conditions and often at great personal risk to their own life. Some of his videos has become viral.
We've worked throughout the entire night. We haven't stopped. The bombing has been non-stop. We've run out of ketamine. We've run out of propofol. We've run out of all painkillers. We can't sedate anyone. We can't give them any analgesia. When we intubate people, they wake up and they're choking because we have no sedation. There are 7 girls getting their legs amputated, no anesthesia. The bombing is still going on. The room is still shaking.
As the world watches on, their testimony is a story of dedication, commitment, and upholding the humanity and work ethics. A strong commitment to care and compassion. Most importantly, upholding the values of basic humanity and medical ethics in the face of grave injustice. Welcome, Dr. Mustafa. Thank you, and thank you for coming in, and thank you for taking time to talk to us. As I understand, you were part of a medical mission more than once to Gaza, multiple times.
Yep.
One last year in August, and one just recently.
Yes.
Can you please describe the overall experience that what you saw when you went there to Gaza, especially during the second time, and how different was that in the first time when you went over there? In general, the situation of the patients and the hospital conditions, etc.
So, when I entered Gaza, the first time I entered Gaza was in June 2024. And I remember the first, half an hour of arriving in Gaza. We literally had just put our bags down into our rooms in the hospital, and we were called to the emergency room. And there was a house, a residential building that had been bombed. Mm-hmm. When we went to go see, it turned out that everybody had been killed. Everybody was dead. And instead of going to the emergency department, they went to the morgue, which was just over the road from the emergency department within the hospital grounds. And I remember, when we went into the morgue and these bodies were coming in and they were being put in plastic bags, other family members had come in, distant family members, cousins and other relatives had come in for this family. And they were trying to identify the bodies that had been burnt by the jewelry that they were wearing on their hands. Mm-hmm. They were trying to identify them from the clothes that they were wearing because their faces were so badly burnt. And some of them had missing heads.
Missing heads.
Yeah. And that was in the first 30 minutes of arriving in Gaza. So it's very, very confronting. As soon as you arrive, you've already seen an entire family being killed. You've already seen horrific injuries. You've already seen people with 80% body burns. And the bombing is still going on. So you can hear the bombing all around you, and the drones are overhead all the time. So it's a very confronting place to go and work. Yes. Okay. Do you know, when we say like clothes, obviously the clothes would be badly burnt as well, but it would be people's shoes.
Look at the shoes.
People's, sandals. Mm-hmm. That's the way that they would try and identify these bodies. Mm-hmm. And that's just how, and that's like that every single day. And that's why, when we look at the death count in Gaza, the death count in Gaza is of people that they name and identify.
Okay.
But there are many that, one, they don't identify, and there are many that are so so mutilated, these bodies, that they don't actually know how many bodies there are, because some of these bodies are just come in body bags, in plastic bags, and it's just flesh. It's just human flesh. They know that there was a family of 10 in there, and they haven't found all the bodies, but what they find is these bags of flesh, of limbs, of intestines, and they just put them in a bag and they bring them in. And, there's a lot of people in Gaza that are buried under the rubble.
Under the rubble,
And, if you have family members that have been killed and you are in the north of Gaza and they're dead family members, there is no point in going to the hospital for a doctor just to tell you that they are dead. So people just bury them there, outside the house. They bury them at the street.
On the street, okay.
Because there is no... It's difficult for transportation around Gaza. It's expensive and it's dangerous. So if you've got family members that are dead, why would you leave to go to a hospital that might be kilometers away, risk getting killed, just taking them to the hospital, just so the doctor can say that they're dead? So there are many of these people that are buried all over Gaza that haven't been counted. There are many that have been killed and buried in mass graves by Israelis, as by the IDF, which we've seen pictures of when they found mass graves outside Al-Shifa Hospital and places like that. And there are many dead that are still buried under the rubble, because there's no heavy lifting equipment to remove the rubble, and 90% of the structures are either damaged or destroyed in Gaza. So how many people are under the rubble? There's literally tens of thousands. And that's why the death count is much higher than what they say on TV.
And there are also instances where the tank roll over the dead bodies.
Yes. Well, it's not just that the tanks roll over the dead bodies. There are so many bodies that the tanks rolled over that there was a particular platoon, a tank platoon, that had said that they have PTSD from rolling over that many dead Palestinians. That one of them said that he can no longer eat meat because of the squashing of the humans, of how many humans he squashed with his tank. That's just one tank unit.
Okay.
So, and like I say...
This was in your second time?
No, first and second time.
First and second time.
Yeah, this is, Gaza has been hell for 2 years, for almost 2 years now. And, whenever we go into Gaza, we always think we've seen the worst, but it just gets exponentially worse every time.
So, how different was the reality from what you expected?
I don't think anyone could, you can't prepare for Gaza. You see the images on TV and you see these mass casualty events and you think, right, I can deal with seeing, people with heads missing, limbs missing, bleeding out, intestines hanging out. But when you're there in an emergency department, you're not looking at a screen for 15 seconds and then scrolling onto the next video. You're there.
You are there.
You're hearing the screams of the family. You're hearing the screams of the child who, because we don't have any painkillers in the hospital, they're there screaming for 8-9 hours in the corner of the emergency department because we have no painkillers to give that child. That's what makes it, that's what, you look at a screen and you say, I can handle looking at this video for 30 seconds, but can you handle a screaming child for 8 hours who's got a limb missing? Can you handle a screaming child who's got 40% body burns? Can you handle a mother who is holding her child as he's bleeding out and we can't do anything because we don't have the medical equipment? And it's there constantly in your face. When family members are coming up to you and begging you to save their child's life, it's very different. And that's why going there and experiencing it, it's a very eye-opening experience compared to just watching it on the screen.
I can imagine that. Can you describe the difference between your first trip and the second trip in terms of what you experienced? During the first trip, which was in 2024, the situation was awful, was very bad anyway, but in the second time, it is apocalyptic and even worse. So, and also the drop of there was no aid at all coming in since March, some period, March 2nd, I believe. Israel closed all the borders and not even a single pot of grain or a drop of water was getting into the thing. And the starvation was gripping on the people. So how different was between your first time and the second time your experience?
Do you know, the first time that I went there in June 2024, there was only 50 to 60 aid trucks going into Gaza a day. And that's during a war. You know, it requires 500 aid trucks a day going into Gaza. This is before the war. And even then, before the war, those 500 aid trucks that were going in, 40% of the children in Gaza had some form of malnutrition before the war. So it just tells you that those 500 aid trucks are not enough anyway. But then to narrow that down after you've destroyed most of Gaza to just 50 trucks a day, which is what was going in, you know, in the second part of the war, it just goes to show you the level of hunger and starvation that's been rampant since last year. We were seeing children dying of starvation in June last year. Never mind June this year. June last year, children were starving to death.
June last year?
June last year, yes. You know, we had children starving to death then. So, do you know,
Whereas while Israel Netanyahu says that there is no starvation at all, it is all made up story, that is what he says. And you are saying that real experience tells that you are saying that people dying out of starvation.
It's not just the starvation though, you know, it's not just him saying that there's no starvation. They said themselves on October the 10th, we are going to put Gaza under a total siege. Nothing is coming in and out, no food, water and electricity. We will treat them as human animals. And they've been making that very clear for almost 2 years. That they are starving Gaza. Even before the war, they were starving Gaza. That was a policy. They were counting the calories. Before the war. So, do you know, they were already, in times of peace, already starving Gaza. What were they going to do during a genocidal war? Of course, starvation was always going to be used as a weapon of war. So, you know, and they've said that very openly.
So can you provide some real scenarios that you have dealt with, trying to provide care under unimaginable pressure and with nothing, no hospital equipments? The hospitals where you were working in and what the conditions you were there. Which hospitals you were there when you were working in?
So I worked in quite a few hospitals. I worked at Al-Shifa Hospital, I worked at the Baptist Hospital, I worked at Al-Aqsa Hospital, I worked at the European Hospital, and I worked at Nasser Hospital. So I've worked I've worked at quite a few hospitals. Now, the situation at these hospitals, especially in the north, is really bad. So at the Baptist Hospital in the north, there wasn't a single ventilator in the emergency room, not one ventilator.
It's all destroyed.
They're all destroyed, yeah. There was no ventilators in the emergency room. There is one functioning CT scanner for the whole north of Gaza. Now, if you put that into perspective, right, you are trying to, when you have a mass casualty event and you have hundreds of injured people, most of them need to go through a CT scanner, but you have one CT scanner.
One CT scanner.
One CT scanner. We had people dying on the CT scanner because they'd been waiting for that long. They became unstable and they died while they were being scanned. And we don't
because they have been waiting in the queue to get a slot.
Yeah, and because we don't have monitoring equipment, it's not like we can take regular blood pressure and heart checks of these people. We maybe had 2 functioning blood pressure cuffs in the emergency department, 2. Now, if you have a mass casualty event and there are hundreds of people, the first thing you do as part of resuscitation is you do what we call an ABC assessment, their airway, breathing, circulation. These are the things that you do straight away when somebody comes in. But we can't do any of that. You know, we can listen with a stethoscope, but most of the doctors don't even have stethoscopes because they've been destroyed. Or they've been, you know, when they raid the hospitals like Al-Shifa, they take all the doctors' stethoscopes and their medical equipment off them anyway. So most of these doctors don't have stethoscopes anyway.
Even the stethoscope has been taken away.
Yes. So, you know, most of the times, most doctors that go into Gaza, they leave their stethoscopes behind because it's just needed, even something as basic as a stethoscope. So you're trying to deal with a mass casualty event and you can't really do a full ABC assessment. You don't have something to check people's heart rate or oxygen levels. You don't have a blood pressure cuff. You don't have glucose sticks to measure people's sugar levels. And you don't even have ultrasound machines, you know, because they've been destroyed as well. So you're trying to deal with a mass casualty event of hundreds of people that you would struggle with at a major hospital with all these equipment. You would still struggle. But imagine trying to do it in that kind of environment.
Then how you were managing all these things, coping up with these things with almost nothing?
You know, we were just resourceful. You know, you'd have to be really, really resourceful in how you do things. You would have to drown out a lot of noise, and you would have to watch people die in the corner of your eyes, knowing that people are dying, and you can't do anything about it because we don't have the resources, the equipment, and the specialties to deal with this patient, and we have to focus on patients that we can save.
So you are basically picking and choosing the patients who has got more chance to live,
Yes.
then care for them, and let others die.
You know,
Unimaginable conditions.
when you have a mass casualty event, you don't have enough doctors. And you have to remember, there's not just a restriction on food going into Gaza, there's a restriction on doctors. There's only a handful of doctors that go into Gaza every week, and a handful that go in and a handful that leave. So, you know, and on top of that, you know, the Israelis are killing doctors, nurses, and paramedics, and this has been documented. You know, the healthcare population in Gaza, healthcare workers in Gaza, make up 0.7% of the population, right? Yet they make up 8% of the dead.
They make up the 8% of the dead.
Even though they are 0.7% of the population.
0.7% of the population.
So that just shows you this is not a statistical anomaly. This shows that they are being targeted. So you have healthcare workers that are targeted. You have journalists that are targeted as well, but you have hospitals that are destroyed as well. Healthcare equipment that's destroyed. And then you have mass casualty event after mass casualty event, limited of medicine, antibiotics, painkillers. And then you have to try and save a child's life who's got an arm blown off and is bleeding out. What do you do? What do you do when a child has got burns to half of his body and you don't have a painkiller for that child? You just have to watch them scream for 8 hours.
Unbearable experience.
It's tough.
Usually, and quite often, the Israeli occupation forces gives you evacuation orders, move from one place to another place, with often very short notice. How did you and your colleagues manage these continuous evacuation orders with the patients moving without knowing where to go?
So, you know, that's something that the Gaza population has to, you know, most people in Gaza have moved now and been evacuated at least 6-7 times out of their homes and moved to other places. And they sometimes get nothing but maybe sometimes even 30 seconds, a minute to leave their house before it's bombed, which means they lose everything.
They lose everything.
They lose everything. And when they lose everything in their house, no supplies are getting in for 2 years. There's no mobile phones getting in. There's no kitchen equipment, nothing. None of that is getting in. So because none of that is getting into Gaza and everything is being destroyed, people are now wandering around with no clothes or very little clothes, one set of clothes, you know, one set of shoes. Most people don't have working mobile phones. There's just so much in Gaza that is that's being destroyed.
And there is no power as well, isn't it?
Electricity's cut off as well.
Cut off as well.
Yeah,
So in the hospitals, how you are managing without power?
So in the hospitals, they have their own generators, and they also have solar panels. But even the solar panels get shot by Israeli drones. They shoot at the solar panels that are on the roofs of hospitals.
So purposefully to destroy them.
To destroy the hospitals.
And also they shut down the fuel for the generators.
Yes, they do. And you know, there's been many incidences in Gaza where children have died in their incubators because they've run out of fuel, where people have died in intensive care because the oxygen has run out in the hospital. So these are all targeted campaigns to inflict maximal damage. So even if you manage to save somebody's life and you manage to resuscitate them and stabilize them and get them to an intensive care unit, they could still die because the Israelis could cut off the oxygen to that patient. This is the level of cruelty. The cruelty doesn't stop at just the bomb. It's everything that goes before the bomb and after the bomb. Yeah.
Okay. So if there is no power, there is no electricity, there is no fuel, even in the house where the people are living or in the destroyed parts of their house, managing their daily life itself is a big challenge, isn't it? And you said that there is no clothes getting in, there is nothing gets in. So how have you seen that? How are the people are managing their daily lives over there then?
They're very resilient and they're very resourceful. And you know, they've been living under occupation of Gaza for 20 years. They've been bombed for many weeks at a time over the last 20 years. They, obviously this is a very extreme situation what's happened, but you know, there are people that cope and there are people that are not coping in Gaza. You've seen images of children who have died from the cold in the tents because there's no fuel for heating. And children
there's no blanket.
and there's no
blanket to come in.
Yeah, they won't even allow blankets to come in. You know, they restrict these items.
Yeah, last January, about I think 7 or 8 infants died because of hypothermia.
Yes. This is the situation. So this is what I mean about Gaza. It's not just the bomb that kills them; it's everything before and after the bomb. And that's why it's just very, very difficult. But you know, these people, they are resourceful. They, you know, when I went to people's homes in Gaza, they would have a car battery because you know the car, there's no fuel for the car, so they take the battery out of the car and they use that battery and they put a bit of wire around and they make that to power the lights in their tent.
In the tent.
Yeah. So you know they're very resourceful.
Plastic.
Yeah. There's just ways that they do these things to survive.